Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Guide Collective Roundtable, Travel Roundtable, that is. I'm moderator, Andrew, and I'm now in the Julian Alps here in Slovenia, and it's almost perfect timing because it's sunset here now. And joining us today on our show, we have some familiar faces. Trish, where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from Kleine Scheidegg in the Swiss Alps in the Lauterbrunnen Valley, and it's a gorgeous day. Check it out. Look at that reflection. It's pretty amazing.
Nice. Reid, that looks like a cool spot, literally.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, everybody. I'm at Victoria Falls on the Zimbabwe side. Here's my Victoria Falls hand-painted coffee mug. Whoops, I'm not holding it very well. There we go.
Nice. Sarah, you look like you're actually in a real place.
I'm in a real place, and it's actually evening, so I can actually bring a glass of wine to the Guide Collective Roundtable today. I am in Piedmont. I'm in a small village outside of the town of Cuneo in northwestern Italy.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah, it's good to exchange the coffee mug for a wine glass. So, Trish and Reid, sometime it'd be great. We could all do this, in the evening, everyone's time, and then we could all be drinking some alcohol.
You don't know what's in my coffee cup.
That
Andrew.
is true. That is true. That is true. Hopefully you've spiked it with something. So we've got a bunch of different topics to go to today. I'm going to start it out with talking with Sarah because as some of you might have noticed on social media, Sarah is now over in the land of Europe. And there were some interesting conversations going on about the fact that you chose to come over here, provoking some feelings, some arguments, some different things like that. Sarah, why don't you tell us just a little bit about what happened when you came over to this side of the pond?
I would say that I experienced what I think they're calling these days travel shaming, which was quite interesting to me. Because I just basically posted something about how complicated it was figuring out how to get over here. And I have reasons I need to be here. It's actually really important that I'm here right now for business and for personal reasons. I needed to come over here, and there was not really an unavoidable situation. So I had to come, and trying to figure out how to get here was so incredibly complicated. I have a European passport. I have a right to be here. The question was really, in what way do I enter? How do I enter safely? How do I take care of my health? And how do I take care of the health of people around me? It was just very interesting because I posted how difficult it was figuring out the moving regulations, how the regulations were changing all the time. And I got a lot of people having very strong feelings about how they thought it was terrible that I was traveling and I'm spreading diseases everywhere I go. And I think the thing that really struck me was that there's this impression that just because you're an American, that you've clearly got the coronavirus. And it doesn't in any way take into account people's personal responsibility, their own health backgrounds, and things that they might do to prepare. And I did all the things you would think of to do to prepare. I, checked in with my doctors. I had health, notes with me. I looked in all the regulations and figured out what it is I need to do to be entering these countries legally and following their local regulations, which I did. And so I'm absolutely up to snuff in terms of I've followed all the rules and I've done what I'm supposed to do, but I'm supposed to be here. So that's kind of the thing that's interesting, is that when you read some of the comments, it sort of makes you think a little bit what's going on in the minds of the people who are commenting, because part of it I think is a bit of like, that's not fair. Why do you get to do that? And I understand that. Yeah, I'm sure that there's a sense of that. But, my family is here. I have family on 2 continents. I'm a person divided between 2 places. So, it's important for me to come back and forth. I've been isolated from my friends and family for months. But also I'm a citizen. My dad is from here. And so I'm a European. So that's the thing. So I think it was an interesting conversation. The thing about it that I kept thinking when I was reading some of the comments that were getting kind of personal and judgmental, I didn't actually respond to a lot of them, and I let the conversation go. I could have blocked people, I could have stopped the conversation, but I think it's a healthy thing to have debate like that. I think it's something I'd like to encourage when we have people that kind of behave, I think, in a way that you might think of as a troll, you know, trying to provoke things or saying nasty things. Somebody said something really rude to my sister. That's kind of when I was about to draw the line. Like, I'm sorry, you don't smack talk my sister. Like, keep it clean. You know, I'm fine with people debating relevant topics, and that's a relevant topic to debate. You know, what are the ethics and so on behind travel these days? And it's a big question, and I don't know how to answer that. I think on a personal level, people have their reasons for traveling, and we can't judge people's reasons because we don't know what's really going on in their lives and why they're doing what they're doing. So, so yeah, it was a very interesting experience. I don't have kerfuffles on my my community, the Adventures with Sarah travel community, very often. It's a very supportive and loving community of people that love to travel. And generally, I just get people who are all for me going out there and doing what I need to do. So it's interesting to see a few people pop up that were really negative, because that just doesn't happen very often. So
Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't like your piece was, oh, here's how I'm beating the system.
No.
Because you're following all the rules, you've got your passport. And I also think, like, if people are, the people who obviously are commenting and maybe not so happy that you're over there, I'm sure anyone who's reading Guide Collective or Adventures with Sarah wants to travel at some point in the future. And like, it's not going to just be like magically like, okay, now we're going to reset everything and press the go button. I mean, things are going to happen. I mean, people need experiences like this to see how things go. I know here in Slovenia, one of the things that I've noticed is the with the kind of a little spike here is it's not people that are coming here. It's not they're not traced to travelers. They're mostly like local people who went out and partied and did stuff. So I think there's like this idea in some people's minds everywhere that, oh, well, if you're the traveler coming into the country, you must be the one bringing it in. When I think we could all look around and see how locals are behaving, and it's obviously not the case.
Well, yeah, and I think that, you know, the way I look at it is that travel is going to have to restart. And in my case, I had to travel. I just had to. And so what we need to do is to start to think about, how do we live with this? I mean, this is a situation that it may not be solved by a vaccine. And if it is, it's going to take a long time. So instead of just staying home and staying in our caves, I think it's really important that we figure out, how do we get along with this? You know, I suited up before I got on the plane. I had my gloves and my mask, and I followed all the regulations, and I, you know, washed my hands religiously and did all of the things that people told me that I needed to do. And I just think that there are protocols to put into place to be able to return to travel safely. The airlines are doing their part big time. The planes, I've never seen cleaner planes in my life. I had 4 seats to myself on that flight from Seattle to Amsterdam. All of the trains and the buses, everything is just sparkling clean. And I mean, Trenitalia is amazing with the way they're being hygienic and handing out these hygiene packets when you get on the train. So there's a lot of stuff in place they're doing to make sure that people are being safe. So I feel reassured in that. I think, at least over here in Europe, and especially the airlines, are really thinking about this. They're being proactive, and I think that's a great sign for travel in the future. And the other piece I just wanted to mention was, I know, Andrew, you're the first person I saw when I got off of all that transportation, and I'm sure you saw the look on my face. It was a feeling of relief, because over here in Europe, they've kind of got it under control, and people more or less are living normal lives. You know, in Slovenia, in your little village in Slovenia, it was really stunning to me to see all the shops open, kids playing, you know, just people living normal lives. And at least where I live in the United States, it's like Armageddon. I mean, you can't really go anywhere. And it was just a real shock to me. It was a shock to see how Europe slammed this big time. They did really, you know, hard lockdowns. They really went full force into taking care of the problem. And they're reaping the rewards now of being able to be more, you know, out and about, and their societies are recovering now. So I'm a little bit in shock because of that. It actually made me very emotional to arrive here and feel like there is a normal world out there, because it doesn't feel normal where I live in Seattle. Here, it feels okay. And it was probably the most okay that I have felt it as a person in months.
Yeah, well, I had a real interesting experience just before we go on to our next topic, just to see, because there's a lot of things that I don't know how are going to be how will be handled in the future. And I actually I took my kids to an Indian buffet today, and then I thought, oh, can we have buffet? I don't know. It seems like that's definitely off the table with everything, but no, they have it. You just wear a mask to the buffet table and do all that stuff, and when you sit back down at your table, you take your mask off. So that was something new to me, because in Slovenia you could eat indoors without a mask, but buffets, I figured that might be the bugaboo that gets cut out because of the way they're set up. But they have a protocol for that, so that was new to me.
Slovenia really seems to have everything under control, and for me, it just felt like the first shot of optimism I've had since mid-March, because it felt like somewhere in the world somebody's got this under control, and that there is a possibility that we can resume normal life eventually if we are to follow suit with all of these other places who've got it under control. So I can't explain to all of you the emotions I feel being here, because I feel like myself for the first time in months. I feel like life can be what it used to be, at least somewhat. And it feels better, you know. And so for all of you out there who are watching in the US who feel hopeless, who feel like that things are just getting worse and worse, there are places in this world where things are okay. And I think that it can be okay for us too. We just have to, you know, get together and get it done. So yeah, that's my report.
I just wanted to add on to what you're saying, Sarah, about how the airlines and the trains, they're all stepping up and they're cleaning and they're facing this reality full on. I just happened to have read this morning an article about cruise lines. They're all remaking themselves in the same way. I mean, and imagine that part of the industry is probably going to be the last to come back, but they're taking those steps. They're not going to have buffets. They're, you know, cleaning is going to happen all the time. They're going to take less passengers. You know, they're dealing with the new reality. And I know that all of us that do tours, you know, I'm reworking all of Imprint Tours protocols for you know, how we're going to approach this. I think the message here, and I want to, you know, add on to that, is that it's hopeful, right? I mean, there is going to be travel. We are going to be traveling again. And that's what we need to be focused on now, as grim as it seems sometimes.
Yeah, I would agree.
The grim is not here. So just the bottom line is that, yeah, it's not so grim outside of the United States. And I just hope everybody knows that.
Yeah, it's a bunker mentality here for sure.
Yep.
So since most of us, or say most folks in the States don't have that passport, European passport they could travel to, and people elsewhere, Australians, of course, are locked in their own country. More and more people seem to be interested in virtual tours or virtual experiences, which is definitely seeming, since that virtual tours and Zoom since the lockdown have been two things definitely on the rise. And Sarah, you're gonna kind of get into the virtual tour with something interesting coming up Saturday, right?
Yeah, so, you know, the Guide Collective, one of our initiatives of the Guide Collective is figuring out how to connect everybody in the United States with a little bit of sunshine over here in Europe, optimism and travel. And so I'm trying, along with my colleagues, we're all trying to kind of collaborate and figure out ways that we can produce virtual experiences for people. So that's one of the things I'm doing while I'm here for these few weeks, is to get together with colleagues and to discover how it is that we can bring everybody watching along with us, so you can have a little bit of a virtual escape. So this week we're going to try our first one. I'm here staying with my friend Lisa Anderson in Piedmont, who is one of my dear friends and one of my most respected colleagues. We're going to go truffle hunting on Saturday. So I'd like to invite all of you you can join us on Adventures with Sarah on Saturday, and I'll put up an invitation later tonight. And we're going to do a truffle hunt in a farm nearby. We don't know how to price these virtual tours, you know, so what we've decided to do is we're going to have a virtual tip jar that we're going to put up, and you can tip Lisa and our friend Anna Savino. So I'm going to put all the information on that. So if you want to participate, you're just going to go to Adventures with Sarah on Facebook Live. And if my friend Lisa wants to come over and say hello. So we're going to do the truffle hunt. Maybe Lisa, you can tell us a little bit about what we are expecting to do.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Trish. Hi, Andrew. I can't see anything. I need to put my glasses on. You guys are so small. Hello.
So what have you got planned for us on Saturday?
So Saturday, Anna Savino and I, so Anna is a guide in the Langa. She has a wonderful website if you want to check it out. It's Italiana. And we are going on a truffle hunt with Filippo in the woods near Barbaresco. Barbaresco is very famous for Barbaresco wine, which is a varietal made from the Nebbiolo grape. And it is an area that is extremely famous, especially for the white truffles from Alba, because we're going to be about 15 kilometers from the town of Alba, which are the most prized truffles in the world. Don't tell the French.
So there you go. So if you'd like to join Lisa and I and our friend Anna, we're going to be doing that. And I'll put some information on Adventures with Sarah. It'll be a live stream. And then we would love for all of you to go ahead and drop a tip in the virtual tip jar. And then that'll just be the start of these virtual experiences. But I'm just curious what all of you guys are thinking. I mean, I know, Trish, you and I have talked a lot about these virtual tours.
Yeah, you and I have a lot of different plans. I mean, it's a little bit more challenging being where I live to be able to do stuff. You know, we're not going out to Europe and I can't fly as other people can, but there's a lot to be done here. There's a lot of places that I want to explore for myself. Having lived in San Diego for the majority of my life, I lived 10 years in Seattle, and then the rest of my life I've lived here in San Diego. There's still so much that I haven't explored yet that I want to be able to explore and share with other people. And I've been looking at a number of other of our colleagues who are doing their own virtual tours, and then also reading up on some really great opportunities that are coming up. You know, this year is the 500th anniversary of the death of the artist Raphael, and there was supposed to be major exhibits that were going on in Italy to celebrate his work, his life, his death, just as they did last year for Leonardo da Vinci, the anniversary of his death 500 years ago. But because nobody can really travel anymore and they don't have those opportunities, they've created virtual tours that people can now go in and see in depth, get to know his artwork up close and personal with great experts. And so things like that, I want to be able to check out, not just for myself, but to be able to share that with other people. I think one really great thing about the virtual tours, independent of COVID, right? So even if we weren't in a COVID situation, to be able to experience a place in a crafted way with an expert, with somebody who's passionate about what they study and what they teach, in a less expensive way, right? Like, you don't have to fly. You don't have to spend all of this money to go to this other place. You can help somebody out one-on-one. I can support my colleagues by tipping them in their tip jar. I can go to a Patreon and pay that subscription and get that content. And I can learn from experts and expand my horizons from the comfort of my own home. So I'm excited for all the opportunities that are coming along the way for our colleagues and just for us as viewers who can learn from all different kinds of people.
Well, and you guys know I'm the eternal optimist, you know, so I always look at the bright side of this, and I have a very strong sense that if we can get a really cool virtual tours program up and running, this is something that could be fascinating for the future. Consider all the people who are not able to travel anymore, and there's a huge population who are going to be aging out of travel soon. So how can they continue to have this sensation of having these wonderful experiences? Let's say hiking in the Swiss Alps, like where you are, Trish, you know, maybe someday you'll hike Mannlichen de Kleine Scheidegg with your phone and with a gimbal, and you'll be able to take people who aren't able to travel any longer along with you for that hike. So, I mean, this is what I think is very exciting, is the endless possibility of all of these virtual tours. So I'm really hoping each Guide Collective member is going to be able to come up with something unique. And whether that's also, like Trish, you're an expert on so many different countries in Europe, but you're in San Diego, so you can still do slide presentations and you can do virtual experiences where you're not in the country, but you're such an expert on them, you can still present them well, don't you think?
I think so, yeah. And I loved when I used to teach classes in person up in Seattle for Rick Steves Europe, to be able to interact with people and teach about the places that I love to explore, Venice, Florence, Rome, Paris, areas in Switzerland. That was always a great opportunity. And to be able to interact with people, I think too, with virtual tours, if you have that opportunity to interact with people, asking questions, to explore their curiosities, and engage with them in that way, I think is a wonderful opportunity. And we can do all kinds of different things. We can do cooking classes, as you have done, Sarah, with a number of our friends and colleagues, such as Alfredo, to be able to learn stories about our own families. And there was a time before my grandmother had passed away, when I happened to be in a car ride with her, and we just had an exorbitant amount of time, and we just started chatting, and the stories and the histories that I learned from her personal experiences growing up during World War II in the Philippines, and when she was raising my mom and my mom's siblings and all that stuff. But to be able to have that kind of interaction, it's not quite a virtual tour, but to have that heritage experience and engage with somebody and learn about them and see their perspective from the life that they've led, I think there's just such a richness of opportunity that we can have with all of these virtual experiences.
I was going to say, I spent seemingly the last 5 months reading travel books, which only gives you a certain perspective on places that I haven't been to yet. And now I'm definitely hungry to say, okay, I still can't go to most of these places. I want to go and see who can show me around, like Central Asia. That's probably the place I want to see more than anywhere else. And it's either too hot or we just can't travel. And that's, I think it's a great, it could be a great vehicle once travel is somewhat normal again, even just to sample things, because I think we kind of went from the let's read our guidebooks to maybe let's interact on some of these, like kind of message boards, to reading blogs and all that. But it's always like it's that person, it's the writer's view or the blogger's view or the vlogger's view. And it'd be great to actually just get with someone you've never met before in a place you've only read about or thought about in your mind, and really say, okay, hey, what's down this alley? Like I want to see that, or oh, can you hold on? I want to hear the call to prayer, or whatever it is. Would be just something thrilling, especially right now when we're so cooped up.
Yeah, this is another one of those areas where the emerging technology is opening up all kinds of new doors. So I think it's kind of an exciting new frontier for travel. It's being forced on us a little bit by the COVID situation, but like Andrew was saying, I think there's going to be a place for this going forward.
Yeah. Any last thoughts on virtual tours? Because I would certainly like to ask those of you watching to put some comments in. What are you interested? Does it have to be a live thing? Does it have to be a one-on-one thing? I think about a year ago, that was the idea for some of the companies first starting out, was like, let's do it one-on-one. And what's the interest with just presentations? Some of us are only stuck in one place. So it'd be great for those of you watching, what would you want out of a virtual tour? What kind of experience do you want? Does it have to be a certain thing? Just put in some comments. I think that would help. That would give all of us a better perspective on kind of which direction to go.
I think that the educational opportunities are incredible with this. I mean, when I think about my tour members, when I think about just myself as a guide, as I go around Europe or Asia or Africa and I listen to our local guides, I learn so much. I think about in Egypt, how much I learned from my guide Hoda there, that I would pay easily $20 to listen to Hoda talk for an hour because she's fascinating. And how is it that, people like the four of us who have contacts all over the world with these fascinating teachers who can talk about their place. I mean, imagine somebody with so much charisma and information about Egypt walking you through the Egyptian Museum and showing you King Tut's tomb. I mean, that's pretty powerful. And if you can't be there, which is ideal, some people will never be able to be there, whether it's money or it's, they're not physically able, or because of the COVID thing, whatever the reason is, you can't actually get yourself into that place. What a cool opportunity for us to figure out new ways to share information and to teach people more about culture.
Well, and it's interesting that you talk about that, Sarah, too, because I taught high school Spanish for 15 years here in San Diego, and I used to take my students to Europe every summer. And the experience of watching them and being with them as their minds opened up, seeing things that they had only read about, right, in their textbooks, seeing things that they had only seen on their television, and then be able to experience it in person was really, really powerful. But in the place where we can't exactly do it that way, but to still have that connection, to be there virtually in that spot with the person who can really take us deeper into the history of it, the cultural context, the societal context of something, is huge. And as an educational component, I mean, imagine what this could be for students these days who can't be in a classroom at all. Not just that they can't travel to Europe to have those live experiences, but they can't even physically be in a classroom. You know, how can these things be supportive elements for those students and their learning, or those teachers and their teaching? I think it's a really great opportunity.
And that's another one of our focuses of the Guide Collective, is we want to try and figure out how we can utilize our network of local experts who have access to the Prado Museum. You know, if you can go with our friend Jorge and you're a student studying art in high school and walking with Jorge through the Prado and watching the art live and having somebody who's passionate about you tell something about it to you, there's no comparison. I've always said that, you know, the reason I became a tour guide is because I couldn't afford to stay in the university forever. If I would have been able to choose, I'd have been in college forever because I love learning. But this job has allowed me to do that by learning from our local experts all around the world. So how can we bring that in situ educational experience to not just people who follow us, but also to students? I think that's a really interesting goal for us to pursue.
I also think what could be interesting at some point, because the whole part of the experience of travel is seeing things with all these other people that you're with, whether you're the guide and they're your tour guests or you're a member. It would be to get a group of people you've already traveled with and go with them on a virtual experience. So everyone already knows each other and you can kind of interact with each other. And because that's a huge part of, I mean, that's what I'm missing more than the actual going to this amazing restaurant or seeing this site or whatever, is just kind of getting connected back with people. And I think perhaps a virtual experience could be something where we reconnect with these people that we used to travel with and start kind of talking again, because everyone seems so, you know, far apart now. So let's wrap this up, and we'll head to our next topic. And I'll say this, you know, I kind of built my travel business on always going to off the beaten path places, and not so much the big cities and the big sites and attractions. But there's certainly an art to seeing backdoor sites in front door places. And I think Reid will have some good ideas and suggestions for this. To where you can go to places that are definitely well on the tourist track and on the map, but see something or experience something different than a lot of people who go to the same places there.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, you know, like Sarah and Trish, I occasionally gave talks in Seattle at Rick Steves Europe, and that's one of those questions that always comes up at the end. With the explosion of middle-class tourism of the last 20 years, many of our travelers, they've been to Rome, they've been to Paris, they've been to Barcelona, and they love those places and they want to go back, but they don't want to see those same old, they don't want to see the Eiffel Tower and the Sagrada Familia and the Colosseum every time they go back. Once they've done that, they're ready to move on to something else. So that was one of the fun things I always found about the job that we all share, is that we have the opportunity to go to places multiple times, and rather than sit in our rooms and read a magazine, go out and explore a little bit. So just a couple that I've found. You can't imagine two more front door destinations than Florence and Rome in Italy. And in Rome, my favorite off the beaten track backdoor site is a statue by Bernini in a church called San Francesco della Ripa in Trastevere. I don't know if any of the other three of you have been there, but you know, everybody knows Bernini. You see all of his public art in the squares, his fountains, etc. in Rome. If people are in Rome for 2 or 3 days, they usually go to Santa Maria della Vittoria. near Piazza Repubblica and see his Saint Teresa in Ecstasy, one of the great pieces of marble sculpture of all time. People have all sought that out typically. But if you go to San Francesco della Ripa, it's completely sort of in the backwater there of Trastevere. It's even out several blocks from the center of Trastevere that people have gotten used to exploring. And you can walk in there almost any time of the day, and for sure there's not going to be another tour group standing in front of the statue, and very, very often no one. And it's Saint Ludovica in Ecstasy. It's got that same passion that Bernini imbues Saint Teresa with. She's swooning in ecstasy. She's lying down rather than sitting up like Teresa. I mean, it's as moving and as spectacular a statue as Saint Teresa, the more famous Saint Teresa in Ecstasy, but you get to enjoy it pretty much to yourself. In Florence, there's I should have done my research quickly before we got on air today, but I can't remember whether it's the Museum of Egyptian Antiquities or if it's actually the Museum of what am I trying to the little what are the little pieces
Amulet?
of
Cameos?
Amulet?
cameos? Thank you, Trish. There's a cameo museum, and I can't remember which one it is. I can see the neighborhood, and it's not the museums themselves that's fascinating. But one of those museums, you can, after paying entrance and seeing the museum, there's a corridor that leads you to the Church of Santa Annunziata. And it doesn't lead you to the church, but it leads you to the private Medici box, to where they used to be able to come by themselves and look down into the church and participate in the service there without having to mix it up with the riffraff of Florence, right? It's like a private little box with a little viewing window. It's just such a unique thing. It's well worth the price of admission, even if you don't care about the museum, just to walk through that long corridor and then at the end have the little viewing space, right? It's like Louis X's little private viewing box in Saint-Chapelle, Trish. I know you know what I'm talking about, right? It's just like that, only you can actually be sitting in it and looking out. It's just amazing. And it's one of those really great backdoor things that you do in a town that's really front door. Who else has got something?
I'll throw out for Split, Croatia. Everyone comes there basically seeing Diocletian's palace and then leaves. Or outside of Diocletian's palace, there's a huge statue of this Saint Gregory of Nin, and everyone rubs his toe. It's one of those things like everywhere in Europe for luck, so his toe's all shiny. But that's actually done by a famous Croatian sculptor, Ivan Meštrović. And if you walked like a half an hour away from all the tourist cafes and Diocletian's palace and that kind of cruise ship riffraff, you can go to a whole gallery, a nice building, and it's just it's a nice walk because you just actually realize there's more to Split than a ferry port and a Roman emperor's palace. And he's got his sculptures in different places in Yugoslavia, former Yugoslav countries, and he taught in Chicago after the Second World War, and I believe he's got his sculptures around in the US too. So he's a quite famous sculptor, and I think he also did some architect. And everyone's seen a sculpture of this one saint next to Diocletian's palace, and that's probably all they know about him. So that's like a nice thing to do. Plus it gets you away from just the normal kind of crowds there and lets you kind of notice that there's something else other than that one particular old part of Split. So that would definitely be one of my picks for backdoor and the front door city. Trish, you got any?
I got a couple, so you're gonna have to forgive me about this. In Florence, if we're gonna come back to that, just maybe 2 blocks south of Piazza Santissima Annunziata, which is not far from the Duomo, there is a tiny museum called the Museum of Precious Stones. And if you go in there, it's what, maybe two floors, that's about it, and maybe 6 rooms total. But when they talk about precious stones, it's this kind of inlaid work that the Medici supported. They had this whole organization of artists that were creating works of inlaid stone with intricate designs, so floral patterns or landscapes that actually look like paintings, but are pieces of precious stone. So maybe like an azurite stone might be working for the sky, or an amethyst cut stone might be the background of a mountainous landscape. And it's so gorgeous just to be amongst that sumptuousness that an entire family supported, created an industry around that. And there's nobody in there, right? It's air conditioned, it's beautiful, and it's you and the docents, and that's it. And you get to have this really intimate experience. So that's one of my favorite things in Florence. And then in Paris, you know, cosmopolitan city of the world, they have a billion museums, and all the big ones are always crowded out. But one of the newer ones is the Louis Vuitton Foundation, and that's in the northwestern part of the city, in the Bois de Boulogne. And it is a Frank Gehry design building. So you can imagine kind of that wavy structure with all of the metal and all of that. But it's a collection of works that Louis Vuitton, the organization, the corporation, has collected over years and years and years and years. And they have all of that on display. What's really cool about it is that the docents there will take you on an architectural tour to explain about the Gehry building and how it was constructed, and why it was designed the way that it does, to reflect the modernity of Paris and to give nod to its tradition and its heritage. And then where it's seated in the Bois de Boulogne, just outside of it on the north end, is actually an amusement park called the Jardin d'Acclimatation. And it's the coolest thing because only local kids go there. Like you almost never see any tourists in there, but they've got small roller coasters. There's a farm there with actual animals, and then a vegetable garden. There's all kinds of activities that you can do, and it's included in the price of the museum. You can just walk right through. So you can have a great family experience, culturally, architecturally, artistically. And then when the kids are just like, I've had enough, well, then go get them some ice cream and go into the really cool little park and amusement park where only the local Parisian kids are. It's so much fun.
Have you ever been to the Science Museum there in Paris, Trish?
I have. Oh God, that's a fantastic.
If you got that inclination at all, it's out on the edge of the historic center, so you got to ride a ways out on the metro. But that is a fantastic hands-on museum if you like that sort of thing.
And even I mean, there's so many things. What's cool about Paris, especially because they have the Paris Museum Pass too, is that you can go to all of these different places in 2 or 4 day stints, and it's unlimited, right? So even going to the architecture museum, if you go to Trocadero and you think of that staircase that leads up, and you've got those massive buildings that are there, and you're looking back out onto the Eiffel Tower, but there is the Museum of Architecture. And to dive into that aspect, again, not too many people go there, but if you're an architectural buff and you are really interested in building design and other different kind of structures, the longest spanned bridge structure in France, they have a whole exhibition dedicated to that. But then from there too, you have incredible glimpses back onto the Eiffel Tower that nobody ever sees because nobody goes to that museum. You've got the Museum of Arts et Métiers, the Museum of Arts and Crafts, which is all dedicated to handcrafted things that people have made over the centuries, including train designs or the metro or airplanes or cars and all of that. And to get that kind of connection to it and understanding and celebrating what man can create, right? The ingenuity of man and woman and women is just a really cool opportunity. And it's right there in the middle of the city and easy to get to and free, essentially.
Free is good. Sarah, you have any backdoor sites in Sicily or Rome? I'm guessing probably something.
Well, all of Sicily is basically backdoor. So you take a flight down there. But that kind of leads me to sort of my philosophy about backdoor things, is that it doesn't take a whole lot to get outside of the tourist fray. And sometimes you just have to kind of roll the dice. For Sicily, obviously you get on a flight, so you're down there and really you're separated. There's so few people that go down there because it is that extra flight. So what is that extra bridge you have to cross to get into a place where you're not going to find people? And I have spent a lot of time when I've had a day off in between tours or, whatever, just kind of looking at the map of what's around me and thinking, okay, well, I have an extra night in Rome, but I've seen everything in Rome. So what can I do with my day today that will expand my horizons? And what I found is going out to towns out on the periphery of larger cities that are very popular. So for example, Andrew and we run a tour that starts out in Castelfranco Veneto. And the reason I found that is I came into Venice a couple of days early and I didn't want to pay whatever it was, 200 euros a night for a tiny little single room in Venice. So I just looked at the map and I thought, well, what's within an hour train ride? And that's always in my mind. What's within an hour train ride of any place big city? So that was the easiest 1 hour train ride. And then I discovered this cute village, Castelfranco Veneto, that we love. Also close to Venice is Treviso, which is a very, very underrated, sweet little town. It's like a miniature Venice. And then a few years ago, I had the great fortune of having a car when I was in near Rome, and I had an afternoon. So I drove out, but you can take the train also, to a town called Aricia. And Aricia is the capital of porchetta. They invented porchetta, apparently. And so they have all of these little restaurants that do these porchetta feeds where you sit down and they bring you out everything. Like there's no menu, they just start bringing you out things. And it's just really cool because you sit there and you have porchetta, but as it turns out, I came for the porchetta, obviously, but this little village was designed by Bernini, the one that Reid started talking about to start off, which is a very famous artist in Rome. And he did, St. Peter's Square, all of these other great works of art. This little village, he designed the main church, the main square, and the papal palace there. So I had a lovely time there, just kind of discovering something that was only an hour away from Rome. And I even brought my kids back last summer for a porchetta feed again, because I was so impressed with it. So that's the way I look at it when I try to find something completely new. I take a look at a map of somewhere that I maybe know or have been to many times and almost sort of draw like a circle, like how far can you get if you have an hour in a car, an hour in a bus, an hour in a train, and see what little villages line up with that, because you'll be very surprised what you find within very close distance of major cities.
Well, I'd love to hear from viewers out there. What are some of their picks for these backdoor sites in big cities, or even, as Sarah suggested, some of the smaller towns that you can get to close by. Would be great to see what you guys think. Because I'm sure plenty of the travelers, they've done this too. Because as I think we talked about, was it last week, that like capital cities get a little bit boring, or any city with all just the big ticket items. You got to mix it up a little bit and see something outside of that place, or definitely off the normal kind of top 5 museum list, I'd say. Hey, I brought up something last week, and I said, hey, if the viewers are interested to know more about it, then I would gladly share my idea. I had mentioned this when we were talking about international travel and long flights, that I had this travel pod idea. So a few of you said, yes, let's hear more about the travel pod. So here goes. I mean, if anyone wants to see if a company's interested in this, I would love to get a little percentage of this. But it's an idea I've had for, I don't know, probably 10 years. And I always discuss it, especially with my Australian clients, because they have to travel so long. Is for me, when I used to fly across the ocean, I can't sleep on planes. So I've got 10 hours to kill, which means I have to watch 4 or 5 movies I really don't want to watch. Then I have to eat a couple of bad meals that I really don't want to eat, have a bathroom experience that I really don't want to have. And I'm just a little, I don't like flying so much. So, it's, this noise. Oh, what does that mean? Is everything okay? So, what I would just like to be knocked out. And what would be the easiest thing? And I thought, if the Japanese and other places could have these little capsule hotels, that's all you need to move me from A to B. So it would be quite simple, because let's face it, if we're going to send people to Mars in the next 10 years, I'm pretty sure someone could figure this out, is you create little pods, and you're like, your flight time's 9 hours. So that's whatever drug that you're going to knock me out, you give me the right dose. Of course, I have my waiver form, and I go in my little pod, I sleep. You could even put my passport around my neck. So they just check me in, like at customs. Like I wake up, and then there I'm at. I'm like, open up the pod, stamp me into the country, and that's it. We don't have to spend space in the economy or business class part of the plane. We don't need to have stewardesses and airline people attend to me or feed me or give me a PlayStation or 25,000 movies I don't want to watch. We don't need any of that. And you could just, heck, you could probably have whole flights that are just like, yep, they're just like that, kind of like a cargo thing. And as I always say, like, yeah, what if something happened to the plane? Well, I really wouldn't want to be awake anyway for that. So for me, it'd just be better to just be like, hey, whatever. As my wife said, hey, it's like a travel pod and a coffin all in one. So, you know, like a 2-for-1 deal.
I think they do that for animals, Andrew.
Hey, whatever, you know, just, you know, you can do it for some of us who really don't want that like 10 to 24 hour experience. And whatever, I'm gonna have a jet lag anyway, so whatever side effects from being knocked out with the drug for 10 hours or whatever, it's not gonna be any worse than just a normal jet lag. And it would be kind of great. You just wake up and there's the custom officer and they look at the passport on your neck and they look at you and they're like, ching, and boom, there you go, ready to go. So that is my travel pod idea. I know we can make it happen. Now's the perfect time with all this, because like, hey, whatever, however bad the air filtration system in planes is, and even before COVID, it was always viruses and other stuff, because I know a lot of people always get sick on these flights. This is great. Got none of that. It's perfect. So, you know, I think
I'm gonna say no thank you, but you know.
hey, yeah, I mean, you know, and heck, I'm thinking I can get a cheaper ticket this way, because, you know, you don't have to feed me and all this other crap. So anyway, those of you who asked to know more, I hope you're excited to hear about this. Whether you think it's stupid or not, please throw me your comments. If you want to sign up, you know, who knows, maybe we could talk to some tech company and make this happen.
Well, we're getting mixed comments. I'm just looking at the feed right now on Facebook, and it says, "Sorry, Andrew, I love to fly and watch those more movies. I order a special meal, blah, 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 blah." You've got people who say, "Andrew, I like this idea. I hate to fly." And then you've got somebody, Laura, is saying, "Sorry, Andrew, you're freaking me out." And I'm siding with that person.
Well, considering it probably won't happen, you have nothing to worry about. And if it did happen, I'm sure they would make it way better than how I described it. So, hey, whatever. I mean, everyone's got to have their out of the box travel ideas, I think.
Okay, but how much is that going to cost though? You think about that, right? So you have whatever size an airplane is. And then if you have those pods, you can only hold so many people. So you've got to offset that cost. How much do you think that would cost for a transatlantic flight from, let's say, New York to London?
Well, I don't know. I mean, wait a sec. Cost of
No, I guess how
airline
much would
stuff
you
is
be
a
willing to
total
pay?
scam anyway. How that's costed. But I actually think you could have more people in a plane this way. That would be my thought. I mean, unless these pods weigh a ton or whatever, and then you've got weight issues. But I actually think you could probably have more people on a normal flight in pods than you could otherwise. But yeah, hey, look, I'm not the engineer, I'm not the design guy. I'm the idea out of the box. Someone else take it and run with it. You know, I'd love. And 10 years from now, if it shows up, I'll be like, damn it, I was the original pod guy. You know, but
Please
Pam
don't give the airlines-
Upton just said, "This sounds like a Stephen King novel."
Yeah, don't give the airlines any ideas, because they do not need encouragements to make our experiences worse. So please, like, let's just delete this conversation.
I love it, Andrew. I'm all on board.
Okay.
The movement starts here. Like, let's see
all
what
right.
this.
Yeah, I don't know. Plus, I'll probably get sued with Apple, because they'll be like, "Oh, this pod stuff is too close to iPods or something." But you know, whatever. Someone will come up with a catchy marketing ploy and whatever. I don't know. There's so many things that if 20 years ago you'd be like, "Well, that couldn't happen," or "Who would buy that?" And then you know, you look where we are now, and it's like, "Oh." So you never know what's going to happen. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. I'm really happy that actually I had people that responded and say, "Yeah, tell me more about it." So next time I have some wacky, crazy idea, same thing. I'll just count up who's interested, and if there's enough people, the next episode, you know, I'll give my spiel, and then you know, you could like unfriend me or whatever. That's fine. So before we get to our last segment, which is kind of around the table, I do want to mention that next week we're going to have a guest. Her name is, and I'm not sure if I have correct pronunciation, Anne Curia. She's from Rwanda, and she's a specialist for the mountain gorilla treks that people do there. And we will not only have her and interview her, talk to her about what she does, but she'll be part of the whole roundtable. So we're going to design some questions regarding environment things, or perhaps tours that include contact with animals, things like that, some topics that are all related to that. If anyone, any of the viewers have some ideas for what you'd like to see on that episode, I'm completely ignorant. I've never gone on any travel thing that's had for animals. I've never gone anywhere just to see animals, so I'm really kind of out of the loop on that. So I'd love to hear from the viewers, see what questions they like topics for us to bring up on that. So now we're gonna do the around the table thing. And I don't know, coffee was on my brain probably because Sarah and I had to get up quite early today, and I made coffee at like 5:30 in the morning. I thought, for me, I love coffee, and I love cafes and cafe culture. And so we're just going to talk about like what's our favorite coffee drink or favorite kind of style of cafe. I'll start first with saying, my first travel experience, I went to all these kind of Central European old grand coffee house places: Budapest, Vienna, Krakow. And I was just wowed by it, because I came from Seattle, which I thought, oh, we've got a great cafe culture there, other than Starbucks, obviously. And it's just amazing when you're in some of these atmospheric buildings, and the fact that just stay here for 3 hours and drink your coffee and whatever, we're never going to kick you out kind of attitudes. But there's actually a chain of cafes in Poland called something like, it's like Goodbye Farewell or Goodbye Africa. And they have like, I don't know, 50 different types of coffee from wherever you can think of. It is as good of as a coffee selection I'd seen any cafe in Seattle. And then all the different styles, how you want it made or whatever. So Krakow, Warsaw, Gdańsk, probably some other places too. When I see that place, I just go in it, because it's like, great, any kind of a coffee I can imagine. I'll just pick something out from some country I can't find where I'm at. So that's what I really like. I really like these really kind of grand old style cafes, and just with a nice big selection. I'm not the quick shot espresso guy. So Reid, what's your pick for coffee or tea or kind of cafe style?
Well, coffee itself, I'm pretty milquetoast about coffee. I mean, I like coffee very much, and I have a lot when I'm on the road. But just hearing you talk reminded me, it's not just the beverage itself; it's where you're having it and the atmosphere and stuff. And I'm going to go mainstream here and say that the Vienna coffee houses, and take your pick, they are all fantastic places. And there's a little bit, I spend a lot of time on my tours that go there educating people, just like you have to do in Italy, about how to order a latte and not get a glass of milk, right? In Vienna, they have different names for different coffees. And in the coffee houses, you're going to be treated very badly by the wait staff. It's like a badge of honor or something, that they treat you with disdain. So you gotta gird your loins before you go in. But it's understood in Vienna that those coffee houses are your sitting room, right? People live in tiny little apartments. It's a very densely populated city. And so the coffee houses have traditionally become the place where people go to relax, read a newspaper, sip a cup of coffee, visit, and no one will ever ask you to move along from a Vienna coffee house. You order one cup of coffee, they'll keep refilling your glass with water if you want to keep drinking water. You can sit there for hours and hours and hours. It's a very amiable, friendly, welcoming place, apart from the service. I do want to say there is one cup of coffee that I particularly look forward to, and that is, it's not the coffee itself, but again, it's the experience. And that is when I've been doing a Best of Europe tour and I arrive in Italy across from Austria. The first time we stop at an auto grill or some other rest up on the highway, and I know I'm going to get that perfectly brewed under pressure cappuccino that is always just something I look forward to, and it's pleasurable, and I've never been disappointed. The first cappuccino in Italy is my cup.
Sarah?
Oh boy. Well, you know, I'm an Italy specialist, so for me, it would be hard for me to say something other than Italy, but I remember the very first coffee that my cappuccino my son had, my older son Luca. I brought him to Italy about 5 years ago the first time. We landed in Rome on our way to Sicily, and we got off the plane and we went straight on for a cappuccino, and he had his first one, and boy, oh boy, I don't know that I've ever seen a kid so pleased with something before. I think also because he felt like a grown-up, so that was kind of cool. But in Italy, actually, at this time of year, actually, Andrew, you probably saw me the other day. I like to order in the summertime affogato, which means drowned. That's what that means, is drowned. And what it is a scoop of gelato that then is drowned in espresso. And then they usually put maybe whipped cream on it, or in the case of the place we went yesterday, they put chili pepper on top. It was like chili powder, so it was a little spicy. And that was really good. So affogato, you can order that anywhere in Italy during the summertime. And you can ask for whatever flavor gelato you want. So if you want to mix up the flavors, you kind of have to be careful because that could be gross. But you know, usually vanilla is fine, but you can think about chocolate chips, stracciatella or something to make an interesting affogato. So that's really good. Another highlight that people they're kind of off menu for Americans, I guess. A summertime coffee drink here is called caffè sciacquerato, and that's coffee that is put into a shaker, like a cocktail shaker, with ice and a little bit of milk and sugar, and they shake it up and they serve it in a martini glass. And when they shake it, it gets a really beautiful foam on the top. So you look like a sophisticated traveler having your caffè sciacquerato. But the most interesting coffee experience I've had recently was actually last year with Trish. She and I were in Vietnam, and I was really surprised, first of all, by the quality of coffee in Vietnam, and boy, is it strong. But they had some interesting concoctions I'd never seen. One of them is called egg coffee. And so they make essentially like a custard, and they put the custard on top of the coffee. And it sounded disgusting, but actually I thought it was brilliant. Luca and I, my son, we sat around and drank probably 3 of those in a row. They were so good. So I could go on. I love coffee too much. But right now,
interesting thing though about that egg coffee, because it does actually taste like if you were going to drink tiramisu, right? It kind of tastes a little bit like that. It's so rich, so yummy. But the cool origin of it is that Vietnamese cafe, when there were still French that were inhabiting the area, colonial times, they were lacking milk. And so they needed to create some kind of frothy something in order to appease the French. And so this gentleman came up with this egg coffee drink, and it has become one of the major drinks of Vietnam. And Vietnam is actually the 4th largest coffee producing country in the world. And because of that French influence, because of that that kind of cultural phenomenon of sharing that coffee there, it's become such a major industry there. And it's fantastic. I love their coffee with the cafe soda, which is the cold coffee, and it's slow poured, right? So it takes forever to pass through to the coffee grounds, and then it drips into a glass. And then you serve that with condensed milk. And that just takes it to a whole other level. I just love that. That's my go-to drink when I'm in Vietnam, is cafe soda.
Nice. I would. There was a great little bakery in Fremont that an old Vietnamese guy had, and I was like, I'm getting whatever bread he makes because it's great, and obviously it was all French style breads, and I'd always get some kind of coffee drink with condensed milk, and there's the only place I'd ever have it, but that was fantastic. All right, everyone. Well, we are going to be out of time, so hope you enjoyed this episode. Some of the things we talked about, asking for comments for or suggestions for topics for next week for our guests from Rwanda would be great if you could submit some of those, and we'll take a look and try to weave some of those into our conversation. So everyone, have a great week. Take care. And any last words or thoughts from anyone here, and we'll sign off. All right.
Journey well.
Andiamo and ciao from Italia.
Have fun storming the castle. Ciao, everyone.